Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Thursday. Getting connected. Hopefully. This is why we come on early, to make sure that we can connect. Hey Lee, nice to see ya. I'm going to, Jeff, if you can hear me, it just says on my end, it just says waiting for you. So I might cancel, or maybe you canceled. Let's see here. Your request keeps getting denied. Okay, I'm going to try to invite you from my end, maybe. There we go. Let's see what happens. Connecting. Jeff, there you are.
There I be.
Now, can you see me?
Nope, you're all blurry.
Yeah, I know. I'm blurry on my end too. Let's see what's going on here. It's always got to be something, you know?
Of course. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Ah, there you go. Wow.
How are you? That was
impressive.
Today?
I'm doing great.
Great.
How are you?
Pretty good, actually. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, good. It's like everybody else, getting through it. So we're just going to wait a couple of minutes because we have lots of people joining us. I think this is going to be probably one of the hottest topics we've covered so far. So
okay.
Yeah, but where are you? Which city are you in?
I'm in Toronto.
You're in Toronto. Okay. So I live in a small town called Tavistock.
By London or?
Kind of on the way to London, closer to Stratford.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, very, very small town. So I drive in. It's just about a half an hour to where our office is in Waterloo. So, yeah.
And how's your town doing? Managing okay?
Yeah. I mean, I think as a county, like no one here really like talks about how many cases we have, which I guess is a good sign. I think from what I've read, we've had like one, but there's also nothing here. So like in my town, I have a grocery store and a Tim Hortons, and that's literally it. So, you know, you have to kind of, yesterday I was brave enough to tackle Costco. So I was pretty proud about that. But yeah, no, it's risky and kind of scary. You just never know. So
yeah, and people around here, it's funny. I think when the government made mention that they're opening up additional businesses and things like that, the traffic in and around the city, all of a sudden it doubled. Where there was absolutely nothing in weeks previous, now all of a sudden there's cars on the road and people are moving about and things like that. So I think that's cause for optimism. I think that's cause that people are starting to think, okay, well, how can we get back to some semblance of normalcy, and how can we do it safely?
Exactly. Yeah, like of course everyone wants to return to normal, but we also know that if we do it too fast, months from now we'll just be in the same situation. So Definitely. Okay, so I think it's about that time, so we'll get started. So we have lots of people joining us today, and I know we have some people joining us who have maybe never tuned in for my live chats before. And my question is, where have you been? We've been doing this for, oh my gosh, I think I'm going into my 5th week. We've had some great guests. So for those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Krista Clark, and I am the Mental Health and Wellness Coordinator for an organization called Gallivan Student Health and Wellness. We are based out of Waterloo, Ontario, but we service post-secondary students across Canada. So for me, this has been really interesting because I am very used to hopping on a plane to support students across the country, but of course have not been able to do that. So this is my little way of staying connected to everyone and trying to provide some support during this time. And today with me, I have Jeff Schwartz. And Jeff, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell our viewers a little bit about you and the organization that you're from.
Okay, thank you, Krista. And first off, I'm happy to be here. I'm the father of a student that actually just finished 3rd year, so I can empathize and understand some of the things that not only she's going through, but some of her friends as well. But a little bit more about me. I started Consolidated Credit Counseling Services of Canada just over 15 years ago, and we became one of the largest nonprofit credit counseling agencies in the country. So we're helping Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Now, personally, I was born and raised in Canada and mostly in and around the Toronto area. I did my undergrad schooling at Western, not too far from you. I'm married and the father of 3 kids. Now, I've been involved with nonprofits my entire life, usually on the fundraising and operational side. And I'm a self-proclaimed kind of numbers geek. I love following the numbers and seeing what we can do to help to increase them, which leads me to my next thing is, and really, I just love helping people get to somewhere better than they are right now. Right. And that's kind of what we're doing with respect to Consolidated as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's no secret that under normal circumstances, one of the greatest financial stressors for Canadians is finances. I mean, it doesn't matter if we're a student, it doesn't matter what stage of life we're in, we worry about money. And for us who focus on mental health, you know, I recognize that it's one of the leading stressors because I myself have stressed about it. So now we add on this new dynamic of a pandemic and people, you know, being laid off, without work, people wanting to work but can't, not being able, for our students now, not being sure if they're going to be able to find summer employment, again, not because they don't want to, but because things aren't open to work at. So for students, you know, in particular, but for people who are really feeling this stress and pressure around finances, what are some things that they can do to prepare financially during this time? So when things do start to get back to normal, they're in a good place.
And that's a great question because that's exactly the predicament a lot of people are finding themselves in. And you're right, in particular, it's impacting students quite heavily because not only is it the jobs, but they're thinking beyond the summer. They're thinking, okay, well, how am I going to pay for tuition because I really depended upon the summer to earn what I could to support my tuition and my expenses going on the year and into the new year in the fall. So you're right, it not only creates uncertainty, but it creates a tremendous amount of stress, which they may have already had. But what I want to say is first, they've got to realize that what was good yesterday and even in February is not good today, and we really have to be able to accept that so we can move on. And on top of that, what's going to happen tomorrow is also uncertain because, I mean, we're seeing companies and opportunities dry up that were here today just because they can't kind of move on for tomorrow, and we have to be able to adapt to that as well. So the first thing I tell people, and it's a great place to start, is assess your current situation. Get into a position where you really have a better understanding or a firm understanding of where you're at now. So it's things like laying out all your bills and your statements, print them offline on the coffee table in front of you, and as well as all the other expenses that you might have or you think that are coming up. Identify what those are so you have a good idea and put them into a spreadsheet or somewhere where you can kind of tabulate what you have. Now, on the other side of that is you also want to put down what sources of income you're getting. So you may be getting some sort of support from your university. You may be getting some sort of support from the government that you already had in terms of a GST rebate or whatever it might be.
Right.
And you might even have gifts or something along those lines that are coming in on that you're expecting. They may not be on a regular basis, but it is a form of income. Now, there might even be some people that have already taken advantage of the CERB and the benefits that are coming back. I mean, and I'll go into a little bit more about that later because my daughter kind of took advantage of one of those things, and I was astounded how easy it was to apply and how quickly she received funding. So these are some of the things that we're going to want to talk about, and everybody's going to want to learn about as best they possibly can. And we want to kind of calculate and tabulate what that looks like for us as well. Some of these things are going to run out. So not only are they good now, but there's going to be a lifespan associated with them. And as a result, we have to kind of figure that into our calculations. The next thing, and this was a bit of a learning curve for me as well, is not only to get informed, but to stay informed. And really, this is a daily exercise. And sometimes it's a twice daily exercise because things are changing so rapidly. I mean, if I rewind probably 3 to 4 weeks, when some of this stuff was just newsworthy and then all of a sudden it changed overnight, it was absolutely incredible. I mean, I've got to put my hands out to the government. They've done an excellent job at responding when they hear something isn't working right. And I go back to, as an employer, the wage subsidy. And they initially said, okay, well, there's a 10% wage subsidy and it's only good for so many people. And then it seemed like it was only a few days later that they said, no, we're going to up that to a 75% wage subsidy. And then the next step was, not only is it a 75% wage subsidy, it's going to be applicable to seasonal workers, to people on gig type employment, all that sort of stuff. So they really have responded, which has been fantastic because it's brought more people into the fold and it's allowed people to understand what's available for them. So the last point there is really to get informed and to stay informed. And then when you're working and creating that budget that we're talking about, essentially we're trying to identify what your expenses are and potentially what your income is. We want you to work and think about a new budget, because normally in a circumstance like this, or for the last 15 years, I'm talking to people about, okay, what are your fixed expenses? So what is your rent? What are your insurance payment? Maybe it's a bus pass. Maybe it's a mortgage payment in some cases, and even your debt service. Like, what are your fixed payments that you have? Those need to be paid first. Well, that's kind of thrown out the window during these times. So it's like I said, what was good yesterday is not going to be good for today and perhaps even tomorrow. So we really have to take a new look at it. And as soon as we start diving into these things, we're going to feel a little bit more comfortable. It's going to alleviate some of the stress, and we're going to have a better idea, a better plan as to where we might be going with this.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because we all hear for years that, you know, you should build a budget and you should have a certain amount of money put aside in an emergency situation. But that's not always realistic because there are a lot of Canadians out there that live paycheck to paycheck. And so although they would love to do that in a perfect world, it's just not feasible. So you're right. It's kind of almost getting back to basics and, you know, building a budget and seeing where you're at. And like you said, where it's going. You did mention a lot of the government announcements that have been coming out about funding. And a couple of weeks ago now, Prime Minister Trudeau did announce the $9 billion in funding specifically to support post-secondary students in Canada. So can you speak a little bit, and it's great that you have a daughter that might be taking advantage of this because you'll really be able to speak to it. But can you speak a little bit about this funding that was announced and maybe give some advice as to ways students can properly budget this money to really get the most out of it?
Yeah, let me talk to it because it's changing so quickly. I mean, I'm gonna really push the students on this call, or I'm gonna really push people to do a lot of the research on their own, because what I give you today may not be valid for tomorrow.
Sure.
And there may be a whole lot of other opportunities that open up as a result. But one of the first things I said was yesterday is gone. So we kind of have to push that behind us. So what does that mean? That means plans. And I talked to my daughter about this. I mean, we've got kids that had jobs lined up and were ready to go, and they were set not only to support themselves over the summer, but they were set to put away some money with this job that they had. So in a lot of cases, that's gone, and that's a bit terrifying. So that comes back to going back to, and I'll say this a number of times, is get informed and stay informed. So keep searching those things, and sometimes it's simple as typing kind of student support update or CERB student update in, and look for the Government of Canada site, because they're going to have all sorts of things that are available for you and what might be applicable to you. And it's kind of neat that they've done it in this way, because I've really found it to be easy to kind of navigate through. I'm a guy that takes a government publication, and after the first 2 paragraphs, I'm asleep. And it's not that it's not relevant, it's just that I can't get through all of this stuff. And then all of a sudden, this one is who's eligible? Or sorry, the first question is, who are you? Are you an individual? Are you a business? Are you a student? And you just kind of click along the way, and it guides you right to the point where before you know it, you're applying. And what information you need is very limited. So these are some great things that the government has done in responding to Canadians to make it easy for them to access this sort of thing. The next thing that you're going to learn that I was kind of surprised at, but I thought was fantastic, is that there are all sorts of opportunities that can increase your worth on the support side. So if you want to help out certain people that are needing additional people during this time, whether it's in food service, whether it's volunteer work, whether it's some sort of support mechanism, they're going to give you more money for that. And I thought that was fantastic. So if you're in a chemical engineering program, or if you're in a food and hospitality management program, or if you're in a neuroscience program, whatever the program is, I challenge the people to kind of listen and think, well, what can I pivot to that is actually what the government's looking for? Where can I pivot to where the opportunities might exist, so that it's a different way of thinking about these things? So it's not just about the programs, but it's about what the economy, what society is looking for from me right now. And quite frankly, I'm young and I'm still in school. I can be malleable. I can adapt to the new reality and try and find these new opportunities, because it's really going to help. So what am I saying here? This is a fantastic opportunity to grow and to learn and to show how resilient you can be in a circumstance like this, because it's only going to benefit you long term. So we talked about kind of where the jobs are needed. And then there's also opportunities where there's assistance without having a job. They're just kind of putting it out there. The government is providing assistance to students to say, okay, listen, we get it. You need to survive. And it's like I watched my daughter, and like within minutes she had applied. She had found the application. She had applied, and then like 3 to 4 days later, she'd gotten her first check from the government. And I said, right. Wow, like that was incredible. I'm not sure that it's that quick with business, but for the students, I think they're moving things along quite rapidly. The one thing that is outside the government that people should understand is there's tremendous amount of scholarships and grants out there for students. And I struggle with the fact that students aren't taking enough advantage of this. At Consolidated, we gave away $6,000 this year for grants and scholarships to students across the country. And, you know, it makes us feel great because they're getting involved. But truth be told, it was just a lot of these people just applied online. They found it through a website. They found it through a Facebook posting, whatever it was. And like they probably only put in kind of student scholarships. And there's hundreds and hundreds of them. And there's organizations like ours that are willing to support people that are going to take the initiative and to move that type of thing forward.
Oh, wow. That's great information. So is that something that you do every year?
Yes. Yes. Okay. There's a college that we support, Seneca, close by, and they've got a fantastic program for local and international students, and they're doing a great job. And I think as part of a community member, we want to support where we work and the people that we work with, and they're thrilled to have us. And then there was one that was more widespread, And I think someone in the Ottawa area won. They were going into law school next year, and they won that scholarship. So
Oh,
it's been
wow.
good.
That's great. That's so awesome. Um, when you were talking about your daughter applying and how easy it was, and then how quickly the money kind of was in her account, and I've heard that from a couple of people too that have also applied. And of course, that's really positive for the people who need it and the people who qualify for it. But for things like CERB and this student funding that's being announced, is there anything that you would caution people about when they're applying, or things for them to keep in mind when they're going to access this funding?
That's a great question, because I'm hearing the same thing, not only from students, but also from our clients and from people that are working around or looking for funding around our employees. And some of the things that are coming back is they have to be careful around what they apply for, because it could disqualify them for something else.
Okay.
So it's almost like you want to do a little bit more homework, you want to do a little bit more research, listen to the news. And I'm not one to plug media, but you know what, if you kind of type some certain things into the search bar, CTV News comes up quite a bit, and they've done a really good job online of isolating what's available and who it might be applicable to, in addition to the government websites. And you really want to kind of research and say, okay, what's going to be most relevant to me? What's going to be my best opportunity, short and longer term, because a lot of them have time frames as to what the funding will last for. And I don't want to disqualify myself for one thing because I've taken on another. And I think that sometimes that comes in with whether you apply for EI versus one of the benefits. So you really want to be careful about what's best suitable for you. The idea that you really want to think about is, let's get over the fact that it's a government website. It really is easy to apply. And I've kind of gone through that already, and I was quite surprised. And even to the point where at Consolidated, we've even had our bank reach out to us and say, listen, can I walk you through this? So there are resources out there that are willing to help you walk through this, recognizing that you're an important part of their business too. So don't be afraid to reach out for help and or ask the questions. Ironically, we're going to be doing a webinar for the CRA likely next week or the week after for some of their employees to help educate them around what's available and how to deal with financial stress. And the amount of calls that they are taking every day absolutely astounded me. So they're there to help, and they're there to help you walk through these things. So even ask them questions about what might be best for you in your situation before getting that, because you don't want to disqualify yourself for one thing just because you jumped on the bandwagon of something that seemed like it was the best thing for you at the time. And keep in mind, things are changing, so you can apply again too.
Absolutely. What about, and I'm just going to kind of throw this question at you, but what about with this funding, any tax implications that may arise next year?
That's a good question too, and I'm not sure how much it will impact post-secondary students, because they're likely already at a lower tax bracket.
Okay.
If you got into the higher tax brackets, it might have more of an impact. But from what I can see in a lot of the programs, it should be calculated into your tax, into your taxable income.
Okay, perfect. No, that's great. I think that's people are worried if I take advantage of the money now and it's so easy, but am I going to pay for it later? So that's really good to know. So you just mentioned a lot of the work that you do around, providing information on how to cope with financial stress. And so it's always been common. It's always been there, like we talked about. So what is some of your best advice for people to kind of take control of this stress that they're feeling around finances, and maybe mitigate some of the pressure that they're feeling?
And that's something that we deal with on a day-by-day basis. You're right. And one of the things that worries me the most in this particular situation is that Canadians were over indebted to begin with, even before we went into this. And you made the comment earlier on that many Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. And quite frankly, when I first got into this industry, and one of the first stats I saw was how many Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck, and that number was about 50%. And give or take 1 or 2% each year, whether it goes up or goes down. It's remained around the 50%. And what that means to me is that if someone were to lose one paycheck, they'd struggle to make ends meet. And that's a real concern. So now going into this pandemic, it's even more of a concern because not only are they not earning the money that they did before and they were stressed, now they're earning even less money. And in many cases, they might even be ringing up their credit card bills. So it's a concern, and it's something that people have to find a way to deal with so that they don't dig themselves into too big a hole. So let's go back to the stress part. One of the first things that we did at Consolidated was we made a booklet, and it can be found on our site, dealing specifically around financial stress and coping with it during this time. And a lot of it is some many common sense things that you want to talk about, but much of it was what we talked about earlier in this conversation around assessing where you are right now. And sometimes people get into such a funk, and we've been locked up inside for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's not surprising that they get down on themselves. Is sometimes it's just do something. First thing is just say, listen, I'm going to do something. It may not be the most productive thing in the world, but I've got to relieve myself of some of the stressful thoughts that I'm having, and I've got to get out and do something. The second part, and it's not so easy, and we talked about it earlier, is to assess your situation. And that's where it becomes really important to say, listen, let's take a step back and say, well, where am I at right now? And maybe I was skating along, living paycheck to paycheck before this, but now it's become more serious. I've taken on a little bit more debt. I really need to ascertain what my financial situation is and understand what debts I have, what real expenses I have, and how I can manage them. And then the third thing would be get informed and stay informed, and we've talked about that. So one of the things that we didn't get into too much on the budgeting side, which I think will help alleviate people's stress, is that type of budget that you set before, or you were thinking about before, with your kind of fixed expenses, then your mandatory flexible expenses, and then your discretionary spending. That's a normal budget. But we're not in a normal budget time anymore. And there's lots of programs and opportunities for people to take a step back and say, okay, I need to manage what I'm doing right now. And first and foremost, that's putting food on the table, making sure I'm safe and healthy. And really, it's understanding that things are changing, and I'm going to come out the other side of this. So that may mean taking advantage of rental payment deferrals, mortgage payment deferrals, insurance payment deferrals, credit card company deferrals. Get on the phone with your credit card company and say, listen, I'm really struggling. I don't have the income I thought I would. And I got to say that the big 5 banks, big 6 banks have been really good about this. And if you ask, they're going to help you out during this time. So that might alleviate some of the stress. And the last thing, and I'm doing a fair amount of this because I enjoy doing it with my daughter as well and my son, is get out and exercise. And my wife are going on long, long walks these days, and find an opportunity to do some of that, because not only is it chemically good, physically good for you, it really gives you a little bit more perspective and some downtime in this stressful, challenging moment that we're in, so that we can be able to kind of tackle things better.
That's great. I love what you're saying, and you've kind of alluded to it a couple of times throughout our conversation, just about not being afraid to reach out and ask for help or ask for further explanation of something, because that's always my message too when it comes to people who may be struggling with their mental health. Like, I'm here, my wellness is here, resources are there. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask. You don't have to suffer in silence. And just like with this, you don't have to, try to figure it out on your own. It is a lot of information, and it's a lot of new information. And like you said, it's ever changing. I'm going to ask you to tell us more about Consolidated Credit. For those that are listening, while Jeff is talking, if by chance you have any quick questions that you want to ask that you're wondering about, you can type them in. We'll try to answer them. If we don't get to your question, I will respond to you with the answer. We just want to make sure that we're keeping things within good time, but we'll cover what we can. So now's your time to just type in any questions if you have them. But Jeff, I'm really, I of course am familiar very much with you and your company. And some of our listeners may have already had a sneak peek that we are partnering. We are in the process of expanding the My Wellness program to include a financial wellness component. We have not launched it yet because this pandemic got in the way and we didn't want it to overshadow the exciting news. So that is coming, and that is coming soon for our My Wellness listeners. But Jeff, can you tell us more about your company, Consolidated Credit, and how people can access it, and what are some of the great things that you have available for people?
Sure, and I don't want to steal the thunder around what we're moving out there, but I'm going to allude to some of it because there's a lot of great stuff there. First off, we've always been here to help, and that's why we're set up. I mean, if you look at our mission statement, our goal is to end financial crises through education, professional counseling, and debt management opportunities. So we're going to be less helpful on the investment side of things, but when you're planning for life events around the financial side of things, we're there to help you, and also in the interventional side, so we can work one-on-one with you, work with your creditors to get to a payment plan that fits within your budget, and you can carry on life as you should. Which leads me to that other thing that you talked about is you don't need to be in trouble to get in touch with us. One of the things that we talked about at length is budgeting, and a lot of people are, well, that's a four-letter word to them because it really is a challenge. They have no love for it. It's boring as hell, and the reality is they don't know where to start. And that's one of the things that our counselors are happy to do. And by the way, it's free of charge. All of the resources that we're providing are totally free of charge. So reach out, call one of our counselors. They'll walk you through a budget. They'll send you a snapshot of it. So that's something that you can look at. And then as part of that conversation, they're likely going to point out areas that you may want to attack a little bit. They say, okay, you're spending a tremendous amount in this area. You might want to cut back on that. And one of the things that you said earlier in the conversation was, people are living paycheck to paycheck. They have no savings. And I got to tell you, that's one of the worst things I can possibly hear, because there is always something, as little as it may be, that someone can do to help create that emergency savings fund. And that's one of the main issues why people keep digging themselves into debt further and further, is because they have these unexpected life expenses and they don't have anything saved. So what's going to happen? They either borrow it for somebody, which they're probably run dry as well, or they're going to take on further debt. So that's going to set them even further back. So it's these budgeting conversations that are particularly valuable during this time so that we can get ahead. Like I said, you don't need to be in trouble to call. We'll walk you through it. Our website is chock full of resources. We've made that more and more interactive, and it's typically based on life events. So whether you're just starting out in university or college, or whether you're getting married, or whether you've been the victim of identity theft, all these resources are available on the site. It's all free of charge. And to that end, we've developed a new platform. We call it Coffee Time. And it's spelled KOFE. And come on, have a coffee with us, and we'll talk about your financial education. And the idea here is that it's really an interactive platform where people can actually go through a basic financial course, a basic personal finance course. There's about 11 or 12 modules. There's quizzes at the end of each module, and then you get a certificate having completed at the end. And it talks a lot about things that people are really interested in. As an example, credit scores. I mean, if you're late and you're going to apply for a car loan, a mortgage, or even on something as simple as an apartment, they're going to check your credit. You want to make sure that that's as clean as it possibly can be. So we help people understand what goes into a credit score, how to rebuild it, and how to maintain it, and how to check it as well. So a lot of different things on that. And lastly, I think we're timely. I mean, I just did a video that's going to be uploaded through social media on if you're worried about filing your tax return. What are the options around that? And if you're anticipating a refund, why you shouldn't wait, because there's opportunities there. These are some of the things that we try and do on a timely basis, depending on the time of year, so that we're helping people stay on top of things. And I got to tell you, it's been fantastic. It's been fun, and it kind of ticks off one of those boxes for me where we're trying to help people get to a better place than they are right now. So our website is consolidatedcredit.ca, but I know through your wellness, you're going to be launching some individual sites for the schools, so that might be an opportunity for them. If you need to reach us, and this will be kind of, there's a toll-free number that is linked to what we're doing here today and with Gallivan. That's 844-871-5254. Once again, that's 844-871-5254. And if you want to reach out because you saw me on this, please feel free to do so. I'm generally responsive, depending on what's going on, but at this time, I'm probably more responsive than I am at other times. So happy to chat and happy to respond to your queries.
Oh, that's great. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a great conversation, and I know there was a lot of anticipation around it from our listeners. And I'll tell you too, it's kind of exciting for me. Like overnight, our followers jumped by like 50 people.
That's great.
So for me, that's huge. So I'm super excited about that. Really look forward to continuing our partnership. It's been great so far. Anyone who wants to reach out to Jeff directly, or you can always get to Jeff through me, whatever works out easier for you. Guys, it is Thursday. It is nearing the end of Mental Health Week. So I hope it was a really good week for you. I am going to be back next Thursday with another special guest. Really excited about it. And the promos for that will be coming out shortly. We're working on them now. You'll see them before the weekend. And I hope you all have a great weekend. And Jeff, I hope you and your family stay safe and healthy. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
You too. Keep well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Take care.